Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for our info session on the Greater Mohawk Valley Land Bank, which will include some 101 information on land banking as a whole. My name is Alyssa DuPont Rader, and I am the Zombie Quarterback and Community Engagement Coordinator for the Greater Mohawk Valley Land Bank. So what is a land bank? Land banks are public authorities that are focused on handling the challenges associated with those vacant, abandoned, and distressed properties and converting them into productive use. So what does productive use mean? That might mean a deteriorated structure was demolished and the land that it stood on is reseeded and regreened and sold to a neighboring property to extend their yard. It might mean that a home that we were able to save is renovated and sold to a family to live in. Or we might sell a property that we stabilized to a buyer who has some renovation experience, who will then renovate that property themselves for either their family or another family to live in. And in all of those scenarios, these properties are now getting back on the tax rolls. So these properties, because they were abandoned and neglected, often the taxes are not being paid and they might be in the tax foreclosure process somewhere. And once they're brought into productive use and they're sold to a responsible buyer, well, now they're back on the tax rolls, contributing to the municipality and the school district. So this graphic is from the Center for Community Progress, and they are national experts in land banking, and we utilize them for consultation to gain some knowledge from their expertise to help guide us. And it shows the positive impacts that a land bank can have on a community. So the first one is increasing property values. Vacant and abandoned properties lower the property value of the homes, not only next to it, but on the same street even. So if you have a vacant property on your street, the value of your home, if you were to go to resell it or even get a home equity loan, is lowered because of that vacant property near you. So when we come in and we renovate these properties or even demolish them if necessary, we're increasing the property values of the other homes in that neighborhood. Increasing municipal revenue. So not only are we increasing the amount of taxes that are paid to a municipality because we're getting these tax delinquent properties back on the tax roll, but again, we're increasing property values, which increases municipal revenue. We also decrease municipal service expenses. So that is by the ways of, say, the DPW has to mow the lawn or take care of dead trees or fallen limbs, or shovel the sidewalk in front of an abandoned home in the winter, even before the land bank sells it. Once it comes into our inventory, we are immediately decreasing municipal service expenses because now the land bank is maintaining these properties. Leverage investment for economic growth. Those who are looking to invest in an area, they are going to be more likely to put their money in areas that are clean and maintained, in areas where there are families in the homes and businesses in the commercial properties. We are encouraging reinvestment in the area. Additionally, increased health and well-being and improved quality of life. It has been shown that just walking past an abandoned building raises your heart rate and your blood pressure. And abandoned buildings also are hubs for crime and are more likely to catch fire. So that is impacting the community. It's impacting municipal service expenses because now they're paying more for their police force and their firemen and women. And when you live near an abandoned property, again, your property values are decreased. It lowers your quality of life because you might be exposed to environmental hazards by ways of lead and asbestos. abandoned buildings harbor pests and rodents, so those could impact your property and your community. So as a whole, if we are addressing these vacant and abandoned properties that have these negative effects on our community and our people and our municipalities, then you're going to have positive impacts and improved quality of life for everyone in that area. This is also an infographic from the Center for Community Progress. These are more in depth to what I had just touched on, the ways that vacant, abandoned, and deteriorated properties negatively impact our communities. Again, public health, they're impacting individual wealth by lowering your property values, community fiscal stability, which we talked about, lowering your tax base, and we also talked about the increased municipal service costs. So as a whole, vacant and abandoned properties truly negatively impact our community. And here's our state, New York. There's the Greater Mohawk Valley Land Bank. So we really are filling quite a void. And geographically, we cover about 10% of New York State. So we have some Mohawk Valley specific needs. So because we're rural, as opposed to say a land bank in a city, who can maybe tackle one block and all the properties next to it and make a huge impact in a neighborhood in a city, our vacant and abandoned properties are spread out. That doesn't mean we don't have them. Our windshield surveys and the community reporting surveys have helped us build a database of our potential vacant and abandoned properties. And it's currently, we have over 700 properties in our database. As far as working with our municipality to work on policy, to help with code enforcement, to attend village board meetings, to give updates on the work that we're doing in the municipality. A land bank that covers a city, like say the city of Syracuse land bank or the city of Albany land bank, they have one set of local government to work with. We have over 160 municipalities that we're working with. That does present a challenge as well. The loss of industry that the Mohawk Valley has experienced. We're part of the Rust Belt. There was a lot of industry in this area at one time that left. And with it, there was a migration of people who left in search of work. So this led to a struggling local economy and an aging housing stock. And then the 2008 housing crisis hit the Mohawk Valley as it hit much of our nation, and it just exacerbated an issue that we were already facing, being part of the Rust Belt. And I'll look at the poverty rates in the counties that we cover. So Montgomery County has the highest poverty rate at 19.9%. And Schoharie County has the lowest. That may be because they're close to the state capital at Albany, and maybe people are able to find work in the capital. This just gives you an idea that there is high poverty in the areas that we cover. Now, how do we locate vacant properties in our communities? Again, we have a very rural coverage area. So I'll state that there are probably many vacant properties that we haven't even added to our database yet because we just don't know about them. Again, it's a huge coverage area. So one of the things that we rely on is public reporting. We have a survey button, not only on our website, gmvlb.org. You can fill in information if you know about a vacant property, maybe near you, so that we can be made aware of it and we can go and assess that property. We also have a public reporting button on our website, mohawkvalleyzombies.com. And the community can report a vacant, abandoned, deteriorated property. It's called Report a Zombie. I'll talk more about exactly what a zombie property is, but essentially, if the community knows of a property that is vacant or abandoned, they can report it this way, and we can add it to our database. We also conduct windshield surveys. So that is as it sounds. It is our code enforcement officers driving around in their car and looking out their windshield, trying to find vacant, abandoned properties. We also find out about these properties at town and village meetings, county tax foreclosure lists, limbo lists, which some counties have lists where they have properties that are so deteriorated that they don't even attempt to send them to auction when they are tax delinquent. These are the limbo list properties. We sometimes utilize United States Postal Service vacancy data. They keep a log of vacant properties that they may notice throughout their routes. The DFS, so that's the Department of Financial Services. They are currently have an initiative to tackle zombie properties, and they keep a database of those properties. And then mortgager community programs. So for example, Fannie Mae, which is a mortgager, they have a program called Community First, where they attempt to sell mortgage foreclosure properties to community organizations. So they give these community organizations, such as land banks, a first look at these properties to see if they're interested in purchasing them before they put them to the market. Now, here's an example of a property that we completely renovated. So this was a property on 21 State Street in Fort Plain, and it didn't have major structural issues, but it was very outdated, and there were some structural issues that had to be remedied, such as the porches. So our project manager, John Mazzarella III, he renovated this property completely, top to bottom. Nothing went untouched. So it was made a brand new property. Inside, you can see that that top deck was totally rebuilt, and he did a really beautiful job. And this property was sold to a family, a local family, who now I believe will shortly be moving into this property. So this is a complete rehab that we have done. And then we have our major structural issues. So this is a property, as you can see, that likely can't be saved. Here's another example, major structural issues. This is, I think, right next door to that previous home on Lester Ave in Ilion. These properties are a hazard to the community. God forbid anybody tried to go into this property. There are, urban explorers or even kids might be curious about what's inside. They could be seriously injured, as you can tell. And there's likely pests in these homes. Okay, so what's the difference between the county auction process for tax foreclosure properties and land banks? With the county auction, a property will be tax delinquent, and depending on the foreclosing governmental unit, or the FGU, in some places it's the entire county that's the FGU. In other places, like in Utica and in Rome, it's the city that's the foreclosing governmental unit. They will have different policies in place for when they foreclose on a property. So let's say, for example, it's 2 years. After 2 years of a property being tax delinquent, it is set to go to the county auction. Now, 2 years might be the policy, but sometimes it is even longer than that. It could be 3 years, 4 years. Even if the policy is 2 years, in best case scenario, sometimes a property is tax delinquent for many years before it even goes to the county auction. Now, at that point, it may have been vacant, neglected for quite some time, and this deterioration process continues. Now, I want to make it very clear that the land bank does not have anything to do with homes that are that have habitants, that have families living in them. We, the county or the city, the FGU, they are the ones who foreclose on properties, whether someone's living in them or not. Where we suggest a shortened redemption period is when a property is vacant, when nobody lives there, when the property has clearly been abandoned. At that point, that's where we would advocate shorten that redemption period so that we can get this property into the hands of a responsible homeowner who will maintain it. Because again, it's the vacant properties that deteriorate so quickly, and extending that redemption period is not increasing the likelihood that these owners are going to pay the taxes on these vacated properties. So after that point that it has come now to the county auction, people who are purchasing properties at county auction, they could have purchased many properties that they picked up at a low bid and they never touched ever again. The county auction process doesn't look at a person's buying history to see if they've ever done that. And that happens sometimes. Buyers pick it up for cheap and don't even ever look at the property ever again. They may strip the property of everything valuable inside it. This property that you're looking at, that's what happened here. It was sold at auction for a couple $1,000s. Out-of-state buyers stripped the property of the copper pipes, of the wood banisters, of the fireplaces to go and sell, and then they walked away from this property and never looked at it again. Chances are they never paid any property taxes either. They don't care if it goes back to tax foreclosure auction. It doesn't affect them in any way other than they lose the property, and they don't care. They took everything of value out of the property already. So out-of-state buyers who maybe they had good intentions. Maybe they thought that they could renovate a property that they purchased at county auction, but they have no renovation experience. They maybe don't have the financial means, and they might be getting in over their heads and not realize it. So that property is likely to continue to be neglected, not be renovated, and not get back on the tax roll. So oftentimes we see these properties that go for county auction, they wind up back on the auction block 2, 3, 4 years later. And by that time that they're getting back into the county auction process, now they're even further deteriorated. So then you end up with these properties that are so deteriorated that they can't even continue the cycle of county auction because they're not worth anything to anyone. They wind up on a limbo list, and that's it, and will most likely need to be demolished. How is a land bank different? We vet our buyers. That is the #1 way that land banks are different from the county auction process, is that when we acquire property, A, we're maintaining it as soon as we acquire it, and B, before we sell it to someone, we want them to submit detailed plans of how they are going to renovate this property. We're looking at our purchaser's history. What are their past renovations? Can they submit photos of property that they have renovated in the past? What is their experience with renovation? What are some skills that they have that are going to come in handy while they renovate this property we're selling them? And then we follow up. So we are checking in on the progress, and we might check in at 3 months to see if they've done any work at all, to maybe get them back on track if they haven't started work by the 3-month mark. And then at the 1-year mark, we would like to see that renovation done. They can apply for an extension of up to 6 months to bring them up to 18 months. But if the purchaser doesn't follow through with the renovation plans, then the land bank can take the property back from them. And the reason for that is that we don't want to further contribute to the issue of the cycle of neglected properties that are purchased by buyers who do not maintain them and get them back on the tax rolls, because that is the ultimate goal, is to get these properties back on the tax rolls. This is a flyer that we have put in many community spaces throughout our coverage area that explains that we can offer assistance to those who are at risk of foreclosure. So at the top it says zombie properties are abandoned bank foreclosures. A zombie property technically is a property that the bank has started the foreclosure process on. It's not complete, but the residents have vacated the property. And sometimes that foreclosure process can take a very long time. And in the meantime, the bank is responsible for maintaining these properties. So we encourage people who see this flyer to go to our website, mohawkvalleyzombies.com. Now, this is the Zombie Property Initiative, which is actually a partnership between Greater Mohawk Valley Land Bank and the city of Utica. So these are two services that are offered on the MohawkValleyZombies.com website. Again, you can report a zombie if a community member knows about a vacant or abandoned property in the area, or they can find help. So they can use a map feature to choose the neighbor work affiliate that covers the area that their home is in to attempt to get that assistance with foreclosure prevention. So this is a former Masonic Temple, and it is in Fort Plain, and we acquired this property. And our goal is to work with a developer to create multi-unit affordable housing for people with service needs, primarily seniors. So it would be like an independent living facility, and it would have many units in it. So this beautiful building that has been vacant for many years, so that would be a great asset to the community of Fort Plain. Now, I'll read what this sign says. This is a sign that is on a property that we own on Main Street in Richfield Springs. And it says, the Greater Mohawk Valley Land Bank Community Pocket Park. On this property once stood a vacant, abandoned, deteriorated property that posed a safety risk to the community of Richfield Springs. In 2019, GMVLB demolished the unsafe structure. The plot is now for sale. While the property awaits a buyer, GMVLB, in partnership with the Richfield Springs Community Co-op, Rotary Club, Chamber of Commerce, Garden Club, Cub Scout Pack 114, high school student volunteers, and Keep Mohawk Valley Beautiful worked together to make this plot a temporary community park. Please rest on the benches, read a book, or walk along the property to the sulfur spring in the back, the only open air spring remaining in the village, where another bench awaits. So again, we demolished an unsafe structure on this property, and while it is for sale, in the meantime, while we attempt to find a responsible buyer for that property, it's a community park, and we used all these community resources and community groups to plant a garden, plant flowers, plant native plants, create a path back to this second bench by the open air sulfur spring. We put in little fairy gardens by the trees, and we took something that was a community hazard, structure that was dilapidated and crumbling, and we turned it into a community asset. It's a park now. We even had our a team of AmeriCorps volunteers that have been staying with us. They did beautiful work, and with the help of Ruby Lake Glass, a donation of their beautiful colored sand, we were able to create a beautiful, almost art installation of this beautiful sand around the bench in front of the property. So that is something that we're really proud of. So that is the end of this recording. If you'd like to follow us for updates on our work in your community, we have an Instagram and a Facebook at GMVLB. You can go on our website, www.gmvlb.org, to get information about the properties we own, to get our full mission statement, to report vacant and abandoned properties. So thank you so much for listening to this. If you made it all the way to the end, if you have questions or comments, please reach out at any time. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.